Hello, welcome to PODnas. This is a sports show with a little Southern Cajun flair. I'm Daniel Hawks. That's Jared Roser. Today, we are going to go over LSU's win versus Florida this weekend. Got some other of the Louisiana games. Tulane played, Louisiana Tech played, UL kind of played. And we also are going to have the plays of the week. But, Jared, how you doing? Let's get into it today.
Good, man. It's a mid-afternoon recording, so there's no telling if this is going to be one where the coffee sends me off the rails midway through because I haven't eaten yet today. But
we can only
hopefully
hope.
we can, keep it together. Hopefully we can keep it together long enough to talk about some of these games because it was a weekend of a few big wins in Louisiana for sure, the marquee games in particular.
Absolutely. So let's start off with that first one, the flagship University of Louisiana State University, LSU. They beat Florida. It was another game where it just feels like they kind of scraped by. A lot of stuff, we can get into that, but I'm more kind of interested in talking about what happened after the game. Brian Kelly goes after a reporter. What was the question about? It was about the run game. And
yeah,
he basically just I bet the players loved it. I would love to see my coach stand up to bat for me that much, in my long, illustrious playing career of high school basketball. He called the reporters spoiled, said a bunch of other stuff, and basically was just like, we won the game. What else do you want from us? Then immediately kind of walks that back on his presser today as of recording this. But just curious what your thoughts on that are, and kind of what fill in some of the gaps that I missed today. It's a very Monday.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pieces to unpack from that situation. That was how the post-game press conference Saturday started, essentially, was BK's initial comments, and then the reporter, who I'll share because it's all out there, and they've kind of kissed and made up a little bit as well. Michael Cauble from WBRZ, he asked the question, and it was kind of like a double and triple down situation. So props to Michael for kind of sticking to the question, but essentially about some of the offensive efficiency struggles in some ways, and in particular establishing the run game, starting on some third downs and whatnot. And it was a talking point for fans and media throughout the game. The offense did not look pretty, really. And so BK immediately clapped back of, that's a ridiculous question. And he expects more from a seasoned media base that we have at LSU and all these things, and that, these kids worked their tails off to go win an SEC game. And, the micro analysis of things like that are off base essentially after a big SEC win where the defense was great and all of those things. And initial reaction, even as it happened, I would say, and part of why I named Cauble too is I'll get to. I think the questions were totally fair. I think it's early in the season. This team is still coming together. The offense has not been what anyone anticipated it to be, which is, highly explosive offense capable of putting up an awful lot of points. Credit does need to go to a good Florida defense. We'll talk in a second as well about the fact that the Garrett Nussmeier has been a little bit more banged up than realized, and some other components of just, we'll get into, I guess, the actual offensive piece of this in a second. But as it's happening, I'm realizing I bet more than 50-50 that this is just Brian Kelly locked and loaded and ready to use an opportunity to send a message to the team and to the fan base. And Cauble is a veteran reporter who has a good rapport with Kelly. And so it was an opportunity there for Kelly to make all of those statements and go on his rant that he knew would go viral and send that message to kind of reset some of the expectations and recognize that, SEC wins are not easy to come by, and all of the things that are going right for this team right now, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was my takeaway then. I anticipated and was texting with some people that night in traffic in contraflow, trying to get back home in the middle of the night, that essentially we're probably watching a BK texts Cauble over the next day and a half and then opens the press conference with an apology Monday, which is 100% exactly how everything played out. And so everyone kind of saying, man, feel sorry for Cauble after. I think the fact that it was Michael and there is that relationship was really part of how the equation happened. I think it was one thing that's fair for BK is it was the first question, which is kind of tough. But for folks that aren't in that room, they need to realize that there are a lot of people in that room and you have to get your question off when you get your question off. And so if they hand Cauble, a veteran reporter, the microphone to start the process while other people kind of get their chance, you don't know if that microphone's ever getting back to you. And so if you're someone that feels like I need to ask about this run game and offense, then you can't just bank on, I'm going to time it for later and get this back because it may never happen. It was very interesting to watch the fan base react to some of the videos, and half of the fan base attack Cauble and the entire institution of journalism and how all reporters are bozos and you can't ask a question like that and what's wrong with this dude and blah, blah, blah. And the other half say, man, that offense was not what we expected. And it's a totally fair question. And this is completely off base for BK to go off the rails about it. And so everyone was so cocksure about their side of the equation. It kind of lets you know that there was more gray area and middle ground to this just because of how polarized in opposite directions so many people were. But that's kind of where we are now Monday. BK actively talking about, hey, we need to be better on offense and in all three phases. And sorry, Michael, for jumping your case a little bit there Saturday.
Do you think, let's talk about this Nussmeier injury. Do you think that maybe part of it and part of the offensive struggles is because he's dealing with this torso injury?
Yeah, absolutely. I do.
Like it doesn't feel like he has it. Like last year, it felt like he was able to get in a rhythm. And when he was on, he was on. And it just hasn't really felt like that at all this year during any game. Really, I mean, they won the Clemson game, but and he was really good in that game. But, it wasn't like last year with a couple of times where he was just absolutely on fire, not missing, not doing anything. He's still a leader in this locker room, and he's leading the team to wins. But like we said, it's just not what we're used to seeing.
And I think there's kind of two pieces to this. One, obviously, if you're dealing with issues, tightness, whatever in your upper body, physically, you're going to have a more difficult time driving the football down the field on some deep shot plays and things like that, particularly knowing that you're going against some good defenses and that some of those windows are going to close quickly. And so how much are you trusting yourself when you're not 100%, don't have maybe your full range and all of those things? The other piece of it is LSU knows that their star quarterback, on whom a lot of this season hinges, as we talked about in the season preview episode, that he's banged up and that they need to take care of him. And so how much are you going to put him at risk in some longer developing, take some time plays and testing downfield with a young, still developing offensive line, when anytime you do that, you're potentially putting him at risk of a big hit that really exacerbates the situation. And so they've gotten to this point 3-0, knew what they had and what they could bring to the table, have tested some things and gotten some different guys involved and tried, from another perspective, just try early on in the season to get the run game jump started when they can as well. Just knowing that they're still laying the foundation for what this team can be by the time the SEC gauntlet hits, and they really need everything clicking at all cylinders. And part of that is also they need Nussmeier completely healthy at that point when some of these bigger games start to pile up week in and week out. And so I thought it was, I said, gotta love like an FCS weekend where there's a little bit more openness to, hey, Nuss is actually banged up a little bit. So that's kind of part of this. They're probably not announcing that publicly going into a Florida game when the Gators are kind of chomping at the bit to get after him. But now that they're hosting Southeastern, they feel a little bit more comfortable. They also feel like they're a little bit over the hump in terms of his recovery and that he will be kind of 100% here sooner than later. So
did they say what the actual torso injury is, what he's dealing with?
Just said torso injury, that he's dealing with some tightness there. And so I don't know specifics beyond that, but it certainly, as much as Kelly tried to kind of downplay the impact of what it means on Saturdays and said they've just had to kind of rest him more during the week, I think it's hard to look at the situation and ignore the two components I mentioned when you're going into
Right.
a physical game on Saturdays. But also, I mean, if you're not able to throw as much during the week, some of the timing and things might not be there as well. You're not as, finely tuned, an instrument or finely tuned throw of the football or whatever, if you're not throwing it nearly as much during the course of the week, which he's still been a participant in practices, but they've just tried to limit him a little bit to make sure he's ready on Saturdays.
Right. We will keep you updated on that. Obviously, like Jarrett said, Southeastern comes into Baton Rouge this weekend, followed up by Ole Miss. That'll be another big test. And then there is that bye week. And we're looking forward to that bye week to try and getting us as close to as 100% as you can be during a long football season. So we will keep you updated there. Speedy recoveries. Also, let's talk about some of the other injuries. One of the Weeks brothers. How long is he out for? And what does that kind of mean for this defense? Who's going to step up to replace him?
Yeah, and I think what'll be interesting too for Nuss this weekend. I mean, he'll start this weekend, it sounds like, but it is Southeastern, and so if you can go out there and play to your ability and get to a nice lead early, maybe get up 4 scores by midway through this game potentially, which might be asking a lot against a solid Lions team. It may take more into the second half before you create some of that distance, but the sooner you can get up, the sooner you feel comfortable saying, hey, we've got Ole Miss next week, even though the bye is still a couple weeks away, let's go get you some rest in the second half type thing. For West Weeks, the oldest of the LSU trio of Weeks brother linebackers, he's dealing with a gastric injury to his calf. It's a strain. I don't know the extent of it. They have said that he can't quite put the pressure on it that he needs to. He's not going to be out there being able to kind of explode off of that leg quite the same way. And so they're being a little bit cautious with him. Didn't think it was right to put him back out there after the injury this past week against Florida. Have not said definitively one way or the other, what this week holds, that he'll be back on the field soon, and they'll just kind of continue to evaluate where he is and what kind of pressure he can put on that to kind of fire off that leg. But it does not sound like they expect it to be a particularly long-term injury, but it may be something that he needs a little bit of rest for.
Okay. Yeah. And also,
my bad, you asked about other guys that can step in.
Yeah.
Devon Keys, who was great in the bowl game against Baylor, ended up playing the entire game pretty much Saturday, stepping in because Whitweeks got tossed early for targeting, then West gets banged up. And so Devon was huge. Ty Singleton, the former standout from Manny High, got far and away his most playing time yet. He's a kid that hasn't played a ton, but is super talented. And so it'll be interesting to watch what his role is now going into this week. And then the youngest Weeks brother, Zach, who actually reclassed up. He was supposed to be a senior in high school right now, and then gets thrown into a heavier role in the SEC opener. And that was another really funny moment of BK's post-game press conference Saturday that got overlooked because of the big rant. That was kind of the major talking point. But he said, man, we're dealing with this adversity. Whitweeks gets tossed, and then West Week gets injured, but you know what? We've got a third Weeks brother, and so we threw him out there, and he maybe didn't know what was going on all the time, but man, was he game, and he was playing his tail off. And so
that's great.
The framing of that was great.
Yeah. Well, lots of stuff going on in the world of LSU Tigers. Just keeps on coming. But let's move on to a little bit elsewhere in the state. UL just was kind of overmatched versus Mizzou. Kind of, what we kind of expected to happen. Sucks. They're still, were you able to watch any of this game? How did Daniel Beal play? How did that quarterback? I know across the board, it wasn't a great day for the Cajuns, but were there any promising signs, especially from this young quarterback?
I did not get a chance to watch any of the Cajuns this week. I was working on some other stuff early, and the game got away from them kind of early.
Yeah.
And so I ended up not tuning in at that point once it was in hand. I know, Coach Dez today answered some questions. It sounds like some fans were kind of critical and feeling like the team had quit. Without watching and just knowing the team a bit and knowing Dez and the coaching staff and that program, I would find that really hard to believe. And so I think my bet, sight unseen, is that that's overblown in the situation. But I look forward to watching them bounce back. I think next week I'm going to go see them live against Marshall, and look to see where they're at. But I anticipate you're looking at a much better and consistently competitive Cajuns team here as we get into Sunbelt action.
All right, and Tulane beat the brakes off of Duke. The score looked a lot better than the game actually was. Jake Retzlaff was the leading rusher for the entire game. 111 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground, 245 yards passing. Is he the quarterback and the running back? Is he baby Josh Allen? What is going on here?
He's the Gettysburg Address man on the ground on Saturday with 4 scores. I mean, he was in a game where so much had been centered on Darian Mensah's return and everything that Duke put into recruiting this guy that was such a promising young quarterback for Tulane last year, to get him to go up to Durham and give him a big payday and whatnot to go take over the Blue Devils offense. Jake Retzlaff stole the show and was phenomenal. All those numbers that you just mentioned, and he was getting after it early. They had, I mean, long drives in front of them early in that game, and they just methodically moved their way down the field with Retzlaff capping each drive. He had the first 2 touchdowns of the game first 3 touchdowns of the game, because when Duke answers with a field goal, he's right back there with another score. And so Tulane took control of this game early, had Mensah kind of off balance and out of rhythm early. There was a point where, I mean, you're talking midway through the game, he was still only completing like 30-something% of his passes, and they couldn't really sustain much. Meanwhile, Retzlaff and company were kind of humming along there early. And so they were able to play from ahead, be in complete control of that game. And as you said, the score at the end of it was far closer than what the game felt like for 4 quarters of action. And so huge win for Tulane to get second Power 4 win under its belt in a 3-week span, and also to kind of send a message in terms of, yeah, Mensah left, but we're still kind of this level of team to beat. And shoot, Mensah left. Mekhi Hughes, who we talked about, the running back from last year, left. They just went and got Jake Retzlaff and did a 2-for-1 deal, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this week, Tulane does have Ole Miss. So it really, if Tulane can pull off an upset at Ole Miss, it's a heavy task. I think they're squarely in the driver's seat for this Power 5, especially with the way USF lost versus Miami this weekend. So big game, big stuff happening. La Tech beats New Mexico State. I wasn't able to watch any of this game. If you have anything on Sonny Cumbie being over 500 that you would like to say, then you let me. Mike's all yours.
Yeah, I mean, a good game, a big game by the Bulldogs that we kind of expected when we did our picks last week. We both were pretty confident in taking Louisiana Tech to go on back home to the Joe and take care of business, and that's exactly what they did. I think they had positive signs in all phases. Blake Baker took over the starting reps at quarterback. He's someone that had played last game at LSU, but had backed up Kukuk, who I still can't feel comfortable saying his name correctly, pronouncing his name correctly. But I think whether because of the difference in opponent or because of some other aspects they were doing differently, just kind of looking at the box score, they had a few more explosive plays, 40-plus yard touchdowns, things like that through the air. They also ended up with some big plays on defense, had a scoop and score by Jacob Bradford, had a couple of interceptions by Cam Franklin and Jakari Foster. Colby Fields and Jaden Mayfield were flying around at linebacker, a couple of in-state kids from Rummel and Ruston, respectively. So a lot to like about them getting back home on the heels of that LSU game and looking really good against New Mexico State.
Yeah, looks like they could be going bowling. Let's go. Would love to see that for Louisiana Tech, especially after the last couple of years that they've had. I know those fans and Russians would like that as well. Anything else from that we want to go over? Do we want to hit Georgia, Tennessee at all? And do we want to hit Arch? How do you want to roll with this? You tell me. You got a couple minutes before we get into top place.
Yeah, I had a chance to watch a little bit of Tennessee and Georgia, and we were looking really smart there for a while with Tennessee opening up a little bit of a lead in that game. And then I got kind of into get over to Tiger Stadium mode. And so I was missing portions as Georgia came back and I think took a lead. Tennessee answered. And then obviously you have the field goal opportunity there late for Tennessee to try and clinch that thing in regulation. And
they had more of a chip shot, and then they got a false start penalty, and it pushed them back. And you could just tell, you could see it in that dude's face that he wasn't making that. Like his eyes were so wide. He was. It's just so funny.
You say that because as they were lining up for the kick, I was in line waiting for the elevator to come back down to send us up to the press box, and then the elevator opened as they're lining up for the play, and we're kind of heading into the elevator, and the last guy making it into that round of elevator rides said, he missed it, and like told the rest of the elevator because we couldn't see at that point. And I don't remember if it was him or another guy that had been like right in front of him, but essentially said, "Oh man, when I saw that kid's eyes, I knew there was no way he was missing that thing." And sure enough, you guys were right.
It's true. It pushed it. I said the bar that I work at up here in Chicago is a Tennessee bar. I've tried to pull the LSU card, but they're firmly entrenched at another bar here in Chicago. Anyway, it was packed. They were very sad, and it was a real gut punch. Kind of like sucked the air out of the room, which is kind of what happens when someone misses a kick like that. That could have, as soon as they went into overtime, I was like, they're not beating them in overtime. There's just no way. Yeah, that's what happened. But that kid Joey Aguilar does looks like they won that trade with UCLA, at least for now, for the time being. So, yeah. And then Arch is still young. I feel like he will. It should click, but we just haven't really seen it yet this year. I don't know. We'll keep you updated on that as well. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but if you don't,
I'm
going to go next.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to watch Saturday, and so I don't have a lot of fresh take on Arch this week. But I remain confident he's going to put it together. I don't think the pieces of his game that he has been viewed so highly for were ever having the strongest arm or this physical tool or that physical tool, so much as some of the makeup that he brings to the table. And, maybe he gets more benefit of the doubt from some folks because of things that his grandfather or uncles accomplished. And so you kind of anticipate and try to project some things from him that we haven't seen as much of yet at the college level. But I think we have seen some of those traits and the ability to handle some things and be a leader in some moments and make some things happen and identify some things as he gets settled, as we watched him develop over the course of his high school career. And now we look for him to develop over the course of his college career. And so as much hype has been on this kid since he was 13, 14 years old, he's still so early in his role as the guy for the Longhorns. And so I'm waiting and watching and optimistic that he's going to put it together as his career there in Austin continues along and he gets more reps.
Absolutely. Well, we have recapped week 3 of college football, and everyone knows, and the entire world knows what is up next. It is the top plays of the week. Oh, fanfare. Oh, yeah. Noises. Oh, confetti popping. We are going to each week show you 4 top plays from the high school games in Louisiana this past week. And we're going to need you to help us vote for which one will win the top play of the week. It's super easy. all you got to do is go to the Podnas Instagram, Podnas_LA. We'll have the plays all up on there and a poll where you can vote or comment which video you think should be the winner. Eventually, this is going to move to the Louisiana versus All website, but for now, it's still on the gram. So let's get into it.
And I'll say this too, in terms of fan involvement. If you've got plays each week, send them in, because I hate how much I have to go scour and try and find stuff. And then inevitably someone's going to complain in 2 days and say, well, why wasn't this play involved? And it's like, well, send it next time, dude. Send it over the course of the weekend.
Slide in our DMs. Okay.
We record on Monday. It's a lot more useful to you to send the candidate our way before the candidates are announced than to complain about it after. And so if your issue is wanting to see a play involved or included, then send that play over. It's going to be more useful than complaining after the fact. But all that, neither here nor there, because here are the 4 plays. I have a couple that I took this weekend over at the Superdome on Friday, and we'll start with, I'm sorry, my man, but U-High had just scored a touchdown late in the second quarter in a defensive slugfest. They're up 7-3, and Jaden Terrence, the junior running back from Archbishop Runnel, has some trouble fielding the ball initially on the ensuing kickoff, and then once he gets his hands on it, he's gone 97 yards to a lead and an awful lot of momentum heading into the locker room for the Rummel Raiders. You watch it again. Kid stays composed in that moment when things could have gotten testy a little bit. Regroups, makes a couple of cuts, makes some guys miss.
He's just gone.
A little bit of contact right there on the attempted leg tackle. Keeps that balance through contact and then shows off the speed that makes him kind of the lightning to the Thunder and Lightning duo with his classmate Corin Hawkins. One that I was not at, but shout out to Shannon Belt of The Advertiser out there in Lafayette. Carson Gursey drops back, and a familiar name, Chance Babineau. The catch, trying to drag him down. Nope, spin free of that one. Get loose, go catch it, go find the end zone. Chance was one of our player of the week candidates last week for a defensive play, a pick 6. The Nickel State commit showing this week in the plays of the week what he can do on offense with this great play, run after catch, showing the physicality and balance to his game as well. LCA ends up coming back and winning a thriller in that game, but Chance and his young quarterback were exceptional. Karen Crow off to a really nice start to the season despite dropping that one to LCA, who is now 2-0 with a couple of wins against 5A opponents. So really impressive stuff by the Knights as well, certainly. My other play in the Dome later that night, Edna Carr trying to find the end zone for the first time, scoreless game in a high-profile matchup with American Heritage from Plantation, Florida, the National Record Program. John Johnson drops back and has Floyd Jones for a big touchdown there. Early second quarter there, Floyd the Barber, Floyd the Acrobat, senior wide receiver. Folks wondered when they graduated 3 Division I wide receiver signees in this 2025 class, how would they be at receiver? And Floyd says that they're just fine. Look at the way he turns and adjusts that ball in the air, makes the one-handed grab, twisting in the back corner of that Superdome end zone. Huge moment for Floyd and for the Cougars to get a little something going offensively in a kind of tough sledding night where the defenses led the way. The Cougars were down late. This is a game, man, we could have done 4 plays of the week candidates off of the Edna Carr comeback win in overtime against American Heritage. Shout out to Brian Castellon with the field goal at the end of regulation to send it to overtime. Aiden Hall, the LSU commit, had a huge chase down strip fumble force near the goal line on what was looking like a big play, if not touchdown, for American Heritage. Instead, Aiden strips it. The ball goes out of the end zone, ends up touchback and Cougars ball. And so just kind of a tip of the iceberg of some of the incredible plays that Edna Carr used to come back and win that game. And speaking of incredible plays and defense and all these things, Southwood up in Shreveport hadn't won a game in 46 games, I believe, a 5-year drought going back several years. And they're up late against Arcadia, but Arcadia is trying to piece something together. And instead, you've got Caden Davis with the heads-up play after the big catch by Arcadia, rips that ball loose, and Christopher Daniel hops on the ball, and they're able to preserve that win late, a 16-15 victory. and ends up getting Coach Diamante Johnson in his debut as the head coach over there at Southwood, and the Cowboys on the right side of things for the first time in a few years. And so just a great win for that team, that program, to get some positive vibes going, and a great play there late by Caden and Christopher to help seal it away.
Absolutely. 4 amazing plays. Now it's your turn. You got to tell us who is the top play. Like I said, go to the PODnas Instagram, PODnas_LA. You'll find the top plays there. You can either vote on the poll or comment which one you think is going to win, and we'll let you guys know in our weekly preview at the end of the week who was the top play of the week. That's all we got for you. Please go to the website, LouisianaVersusAllYall.com. It's up. It's got content on there. It's got everything that you could ever want from Louisiana sports is on LouisianaVersusAllYall.com. More stuff coming soon. Like, subscribe, share this on YouTube if you're watching there. And then, follow the socials. LA versus All Y'all